Okay, so you get this document, and sometimes this numbering, I'm just scrolling down, goes to 23. Sometimes you'll get voluminous. It'll go very high, or it could be very short, but also contain these give me 5 years worth of bank statements or credit card statements. Okay, so that's what we're looking at here. Fine. And so the question is, what do you do? Okay, it's first of all, it's overwhelming.
Yes.
That document said provide all that documents within 30 days. Okay. And what are you supposed to do? Okay. So I'm going to help you. We're going to break this down step by step, very pragmatically. Number one, you're going to create a blank document. It doesn't have to be on a court form. Okay. It could be an affidavit. I have done this with affidavits also, but start with a blank document because you could always paste it into an affidavit afterwards.
That's true. Okay.
So I'm going to show you what a blank document looks like. It's a blank document. Okay. And I have started it already, but you can start it by saying, this letter is a response to your request for information dated, and that one was March 4, 2024. Okay. So if you're watching this in 2027, you'll see how dated this is. Okay, that's a good place to start. And then what you should do is copy all the requests into this blank document.
Right.
Okay. This will save you so much anxiety because you will be able now to, rather than have a piece of paper and have a check mark, I guess, about what you're preparing, we are setting you up for success to actually respond to each request. And when I say respond, I mean that as broadly as possible, because some of the responses may not be, here's what you're asking for.
Right.
Okay, we're going to talk about responses, but start off by copying all the requests. So here I just copied the first two, okay, from what we saw. And what I like to do is I like to make them in bold. Okay. You could or could not, you could decide whether or not to include the headings.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. The point is that it's bold because underneath each one, you should then start putting numbered bullets not in bold. Okay. And of course, Google doesn't let me do it nicely, but that's okay. Whatever format you want. Sometimes what I do also is I will say request number one. Oops, number one. Okay, or Q1. That's even simpler, just to separate it from the answer numbering. Okay.
Okay.
And then you can continue. I mean, there you go. And this will continue, and it's very possible that your responses will be multiple paragraphs, and then the answer to question number 2 will start at number 5 of your responses, kind of like an affidavit, which is fine. Okay. But what you're doing here is you are creating a place for yourself to express yourself and tell your side of the story. Okay. So that's where we are right now. We have a blank document, and now we have imported all of the copy and paste, all of the questions into it. We're kind of recreating it. If you're on good terms with the other party, you can ask them for the Word version of their request to make it simpler. That might be an easier way to save some time. But okay, then what?
Yes.
Then we're going to start to differentiate the requests. Okay, we're going to start thinking about what's being asked because not all asks are the same. So there you go. We differentiate the requests from the responses, either bold, italics, all caps, probably not, but that's up to you. Okay, then, now that we have a blank document, then you need to create a folder. This is so important. Here's a folder. And what I've done in this folder is create subfolders, and I've labeled them Q01, Q02. And the reason why it's 01 and 02 is so that when you get to Q11, it lines up nicely from the computer's perspective. And so you could do this on Windows. You don't like, you can do this on your computer. I'm just happen to be doing it on Google Drive. But the point is that you want empty folders labeled by each question.
Question, right, right.
Okay. And that makes it easy for you to dump the documents that you're going to provide
Right,
in a place, and you'll
right,
know where they are.
right,
Okay. And
right.
it very well may be that some answers will not have documents at the end of the day.
Right.
You could delete those afterwards. That's okay. But at least we're not even talking about sharing these documents yet. We're just talking about a place for you to put your own documents so that you have some forward progress when you're filling out a response. Okay, and you don't get overwhelmed by it. You've done it once and it's done.
Okay.
Okay, and so that's what we've done. We've created subfolders based on the question number, and that's it. That's it. You are now set up for success. And now we're going to get into the problem of what do you answer, right? Okay, so we're gonna take this one by one. You can start categorizing the documents that are being requested in the information into one of four basic line items. Okay, and the number one is probably the most important one that we will focus on. Number four is probably the one while you're watching this video that you don't want to provide. I get that, but no, let's start with number one, because I can make an entire video on number one, and I have to summarize it very quickly.
Right, okay.
Okay, when there are legal issues in life, it doesn't have to be family law, but here we are talking about family law. There are some documents that you want to provide because it will tell your side of the story. Okay, I'm not even talking documents that you have to provide, which we're getting to also under this line item. Okay, but there are things that you want to provide, and I'll give you a very simple explanation for that. Let's say you're claiming that there's property division, and you are claiming that you received an inheritance, and there's money in a bank account at valuation date that should be excluded, right? So the legal onus is on you to trace, and we've done this on another video, to trace the receipt of the inheritance to the bank account at valuation date. Okay, if you don't provide that tracing, you very well risk going, if you're in court, going, all the way to trial, only for the judge to say, nobody disputes that grandma passed away and left the inheritance, but the tracing wasn't provided, so you don't get the exclusion.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Right? Okay.
Right.
Now, that's something you want to do.
Right, right.
So the fact that they're asking you to provide that information,
Yeah.
is they're doing your work for you. Why are they
Yeah.
even going to ask? If you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
And yet the reason why they're bothering you to ask is they're basically saying, this is your case to prove it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
But if they didn't ask for it, it's still your case to prove. So you would want to provide that information. They're kind of doing you a favor by reminding you to do your job. Okay. So that's number one, is that go down the list and say, wait, and if you need help, then I strongly recommend you get advice from a lawyer that will help you determine what documents you need to provide anyway. Okay, that's really important. Okay, there's a second level of documents you have to provide anyway, which is in Rule 13, and we'll get to this a bit more. There is a list of documents that you have to provide, and unfortunately, it's buried in the family law rules. Like, in other words, it's not so easy to find if you Google it on the internet. But there is a list of things that you have to provide, whether you like it or not. And that's probably part of the problem. Some people do not want to provide things. And many people just don't know what they're supposed to. But that too should not need to be asked by the other side. You have to provide that anyway. And if you go to court and it's not provided, well, but not positive results are very likely, and there's a risk that what you're asking for is not going to be granted, and and the story that the other side is making about you is more likely to be believed, because these are things that need to be provided anyway. Okay, fine.
Okay.
That's number one.
Okay.
Number two are documents that you don't mind providing, and they're easy to get. And so there's going to be a question of whether or not you need to provide these. They're asking for it. Do I need to provide it? And sometimes they're easy to get. Okay, so what's an example of that? Bank statements. Okay, people ask for bank statements, and sometimes or T forms. Okay, so you have a tax return. All your T forms information should be reflected on your tax return, and they say, well, no, we want to see the T forms. Okay, technically, actually, if you look very carefully at the child support guidelines, where it lists the income documents, it actually says the T forms, all the slips, the supporting slips, but many people don't provide it because it's already on the tax return. Okay, and so do you need to provide it? Whatever. The point is that, well, that might just be easy to get. You go on to CRA My Account, and there's actually a place where you can just download all your T-slips at once, kind of thing. So very easy to get. Okay. Then there's other documents which you don't necessarily mind providing, but it's or too much to get. And this is now we're going to get into the issue of proportionality. Okay, so is it really related to the court case? Maybe, maybe not. But like you're asking me for 5 years of bank statements? Like that's a lot of bank statements, right? And when you get to credit card statements, it's even worse about accessing. Okay, and then the last column of as you go through the list, you're gonna say, well, okay, well, there's some things I don't want to provide. Okay, and you're allowed to say, I don't want to provide something, but you got to justify it. Okay, and I've given here 5 justifications, not necessarily that you're not going to provide it right away, but maybe you won't provide it. So what you're asking for is irrelevant, has nothing to do with the court case or the issues. Okay, and you see how 4B is very similar to number 3, but what you're asking for is too hard to get or too much. Okay, that alone is a reason to not provide something. Something may be legally protected, for example, solicitor-client privilege or settlement privilege. That's its own legal line item. Some documents are not yours to give. So let's say there is a grandparent that has information that is tangentially, where there is a child that works for a parent, just as an example. So when I say child, I mean a party. So if there's a party that works for their parent, right? And the other party starts asking for corporate documents that's owned by the grandparent, right? The party's parent. Well, that's not yours to give. You may work for the company, but that doesn't mean you have access to that documents. And then there's the possibility of sensitive financial information that could impact on third parties, and you might want to have some safeguards before you provide those documents. Okay, that's a little bit advanced for this video, but that does exist. Okay, now once you realize that there are these 4 big overarching ways of responding to the different, or categorizing the different documents, then you could start formulating how you're going to respond to the specific requests. Okay,